Okay, welcome back to Project Ramrod. This is episode 13 of my little project here for an 88 Dodge Raider. So this week I spent some time working on the interior. My goal was to try to get the windshield installed, but I found that I had to keep backing up a couple of steps to get to the windshield. I had some headliner problems. The headliner in this thing was sagging in several of the corners because the foam behind the headliner kind of breaks down over time and doesn't stick to the ceiling like it used to. So I had to fix that before I put the windshield in because the windshield traps the trim that goes around the headliner. And as you work your way back, I eventually went all the way back to taking out the rear slider windows because they were pretty gunked up with moss and dirt and mud, and it's easier to clean them just popping them out of the car. Alright, I'm fixing to put this windshield in. But first I have to deal with this headliner. This headliner is starting to come down in a few spots. I want to re-glue it up. And to do that I got to take this trim off. This trim tucks behind the windshield weather stripping. So before I put the windshield in, I have to deal with this. That means this trim comes off, and then I can think about gluing up the parts of this headliner that's dropping down. So we will work on that right now. So I've got to strip out the entire interior to get this headliner glued up. All of these edges, the headliner tucks behind it. So if I want to affect some of these bubbles here and there with glue, I've got to get to it. And unfortunately that means the tan plastic shell has to come out. Not a big deal, it's just kind of a pain. And I'm breaking off half of the clips, so I have to buy a package of those plastic clips that hold it on. That's not a big deal either. Okay, I have all the edges of the headliner peeled back where it needed to be re-glued. And I'm going to start applying some sprayable glue to both the foam and the roof. We'll let it dry for a minute and then we'll stick it back on. So that's my goal. I decided not to replace the headliner because I didn't want to spend the money on it, and I'm going to just patch a couple of these holes up here. But I'm going to try to save this headliner because it's not too bad and I don't want to spend the money on a new headliner. So these side windows have to come out so I can clean them. There's a lot of moss and dirt in the felt where this window slides, and all the edges have dirt around them, and the only way to get the things separated is to take them out. You take this out the same way you take the windshield out. You peel the rubber back, you use these popsicle sticks till you get enough of them on there where you can push it out. Once the window's out, you can pull the window frame apart and the glass comes out and you can clean it. So I'm going to work on that right now. Okay, we've wrapped up the headliner, and as you can tell, it didn't turn out that great. It's a lot better than it was. It's not sagging anywhere like it was before, but it's definitely wrinkly. You're not supposed to re-glue foam-backed headliner. You're supposed to just replace it, because as it tears away from the ceiling, you know, it disintegrates. The foam isn't as robust as it used to be, so it's not accepting the glue like it used to. So that's where it's at. I think I'm going to leave it because, like I mentioned, I don't want to spend the extra money on it. And this is supposed to be more of a daily driver. So I don't know. I'll sleep on it and decide if I want to buy a kit. But for now, it is definitely glued up. It's just not the prettiest headliner you'll find. While I'm working on the interior here, I'm going to go ahead and test this rear window washer and see if the motor works. I'm going to fill it up with a little bit of water and see if it leaks. Usually that grommet between the motor and the tank will leak after a while. The rubber gets hard. So I'm going to work on that right now. So I'm testing this rear window washer with this battery. Just want to see if it works first. And when I touch it here, you can clearly hear that it does in fact work. Freaking super loud though. Kind of won't be using that very often. Also, it doesn't leak. I'm surprised that usually this grommet between the motor and the tank on pretty much any car starts to leak after time because this gets hard and brittle. But I filled this up with water a few days back and it's not leaking at all, so that's a plus. But as you can see here, the spray pattern isn't what it should be. It's more of a stream instead of a pattern. Alright, I'm going ahead and taking out all the interior. I'm going to wash it down. I've got new clips to put it all back together. And then once I get the interior pieces all cleaned up, I can start putting them all back up because I can't get to the windshield until all the interior is back in. My goal was to glue up parts of this headliner, which I did, and it's a little wrinkly here and there. It's an old headliner, but I didn't want to spend the money on a new one. I think a new headliner is around $130 plus shipping. And so if if it still irritates me after the car is done, I can do it at a later date. But the reason the interior is out is to clean it, to do some repairs, clean up the windows. And then the interior starts going back in or gets reinstalled from the back forward. And the last thing to go in is the windshield and dash, and then the carpet. So it will be a quick process once I get rolling. It's just a little tedious right now. So this outer piece that slides, you just push it into the groove on the top, and what you're doing is you're pushing this seal away from it and popping it down. And then when you put that in the car, it's going to keep it together. And then that works fine. Now I'm going to get a little bit of spray, kind of like a dry silicone that you can spray into that groove to make it smoother. But there you go. Now the next trick is to put this in the car. And what we will do is wrap a rope or a string in that groove, put some soapy water in it, and when you set it in the car, you're going to pull this string, and as you pull it, it's going to pull this out and wrap it at the lip, that steel lip that holds it in. And I'll try to get you a close-up on that so you can see what the process is. So once I got them out of the car, cleaned them up, repaired them, put them back together, before I put it back on the car, I wanted to prep the paint around the windows. So I went and got a clay bar to what's called claying the paint, or taking off imperfections and dirt and stuff that is stuck to the paint. You get a soapy water, you dip your clay bar in it, and when you rub the paint, it takes off all the debris on the surface of the paint. In fact, this car was parked next to a barn when I found it that had just been painted yellow, and they left the car there and sprayed this barn, and it had yellow overspray and splatter over most of it, and the clay bar just takes it off like magic. Just 3, 4, 5 passes, and it just rips off all the yellow overspray. I found this in kind of a junkyard behind an old tire shop. There's about 40 cars out back. And this one was parked next to the building that they were changing tires in. The building had just been spray painted yellow, and so this has yellow overspray over most of the car. You can see here pretty clearly the yellow splatter. And it decreases as you go back, but most of the car has it. And so I'm using a clay bar, a detailing bar, it's a clay, to take it off. And you can see this top area right here, I've already clayed a little bit, and it comes right off. The clay bar grabs any surface imperfections and rips it off the paint. And all you do is you just dip the clay bar into soapy water, or use a spray bottle or something to get, you need the soapy water to kind of lubricate the surface a little bit, and then you just rub it like you're waxing the car. It takes it all off. You just rub the clay onto it for a few, and then you just fold the clay. You just keep folding the clay in half. And the debris you're pulling off of the paint just gets wrapped up into the clay. Okay, I'm taking off the mirrors so that I can clean it, and then clay bar right past it and polish it. And then I'm also going to probably paint up these mirrors, and they also need to be greased a bit. The mechanism for turning them is kind of wonky, so we'll play around with those, get them cleaned up. So after we wash it, I just clay barring the whole paint job. It's a piece of clay that takes off any dirt and debris that's stuck to the paint. That smooths it out pretty good, and then next we will get the buffing wheel out and get some buffing compound and buff the paint to a shine. So what I'm doing is buffing with rubbing compound around the windows primarily before I put them back in, and then I'll probably do the rest of the car later. But it's easier to be able to buff past where the rubber seal lays and then not have the white chalky gunk to scrub out. So this way you can just rub past it, and then I'll come back and do the roof and the side probably later. Well, here's the finished job after buffing with some compound, and you can see that it's really nice. The black paint turned out pretty glossy, and it's going to be a sharp looking truck, even though the paint isn't the best, but you can clearly see my reflection in this truck that was in a junkyard for a long time. So next we will put this window in. So what you're doing is you're pulling this string which pulls this rubber lip up and around the metal edge of that window frame. Then you're pushing on the outside to suck it into the frame. And the trick is to do it in such a way that you don't tear the seal. There you go. It gets harder as you get towards the end because the whole window's sucking together and that lip has to peel up and around. Oh, come on, man. That window's in. Managed to not break anything. There you have the finished product. We installed the window, and it's much cleaner than it was originally. I don't know if I got a good shot of it when I first got the car, but this was completely caked with moss and mud and twigs, and the windows were just dirty from sitting out in the elements for a long time, and now it looks really nice. And the paint around it's been waxed and polished, and looks really nice itself. So once I got the headliner situation figured out, I started putting some of the trim pieces back in, the plastic paneling and whatnot. And it had broken a handful of clips when I took them out, so I went to the auto parts store and found the right clips to put them back in. Another ugly spot is this back tailgate's been kind of abused. It's definitely got scuffs and tears in it, so I will be on the lookout for a tailgate trim that'll pop up on Craigslist or eBay eventually. Okay, as you can see, we're starting to put the trim back in of the plastic panels for the interior, and it's all clipping back together real nice. I've replaced a few of the plastic fasteners. Many of them I've been able to reuse. But in order to get to the windshield and the dash, I've got to put in the panels from the back forward. So we'll keep plugging away at it here. So you can see here we have our new carpet kit. It's the same color brown that I took out of the car, and it's going to be nice. It's that plush cut. Got the heel pad. Comes with carpet for the wheel wells and whatnot. I do see it's not finished like the original was as far as having a hem around the edges. That's too bad. But it does come with jute padding, which is for insulation for both sound and for heat. So that's kind of nice. See, here's the edging I was talking about. That should be around the foot wells also, or the fender wells, the wheel wells. Also doesn't have the snaps. This is the original. A little bit of a test fit with the new carpet. With all new carpets, you have to lay them out in the sun, or otherwise try to get rid of the wrinkles that come when they're shipped. They're all crammed in a box. So we'll have to figure that out. But yeah, it's gonna look nice. It's a nice new carpet for the back here. Gonna have to figure out how to secure it, whether I'm gonna go with the original snaps. You can see snaps here. I'm back here in the corner. The new carpet didn't come with the snaps, so I can go down to Michael's or Joann Fabrics and buy snaps, attach them, and then you can snap it, or get some Velcro, or we can figure it out. It's a nice little test fit. I also spent some time this week working on the transmission. I got the transmission, the last remaining seal for the transmission, put that on. It's the output shaft for the front differential. And was able to push the transmission back into place, prepping to put it back in the car. I got it all lined up, and I just have to jack it up. Okay, our last seal for this transmission. This is the output shaft going up to the front wheels, the front drive axle, and I ordered a new seal for it. Okay, I've got the transmission positioned, ready to be installed. I just have to raise the transmission, making sure that the shift handle goes into the hole in the floorboard, and then once I get it to the proper height, we will install this transmission crossmember and all the linkage that goes with the shifter. As you can see, we are gonna start attaching this to the car shortly. So one of the things I'm waiting on before I put the motor and transmission back in is a bottom tap for the torque converter. The torque converter bolts that attach it to the flywheel were mostly stripped out from the last guy that had it. So I'm going to upsize to just go to the next size bolt, and I bought a bottom tap. Now there's several different types of taps. There's a taper tap, you have a plug tap. Well, a bottom tap allows you to tap threads all the way to the bottom of a hole that has a bottom on it. Whereas a taper tap or a plug tap is much more cone shaped, and you need some space beyond the hole for that for the front part of that tap to protrude into. And a regular tap or a taper tap won't work on a hole that you need to tap all the way to the bottom. Well, the holes in this torque converter are fairly shallow and they do have a bottom on them, so I had to order a taper tap. I'm sorry, I had to order a bottom tap and a new set of torque converter bolts. So I'm waiting for those. That means I can't put the torque converter in, so once I get the transmission in, I'm still kind of waiting to put the engine in, so I can tap the torque converter, put the torque converter in, then the engine goes in. So that's why I keep toggling back and forth between working on the motor and the transmission and the interior. When I'm waiting for a part on one, I can switch to the other and vice versa. Also, this week I had a few parts come in. I ordered a set of tires. I went with the Mickey Thompson's Deegan 38s, the all-terrains. And the reason I went with those tires is because they looked fairly similar to the original Desert Duelers, which this car came with. I'm a big fan of that look, the 80s Desert Dueler, but they don't really make them anymore. I couldn't find them anywhere online except for Australia. Apparently they're still making them and selling them in Australia, but it wasn't worth the money to have them shipped all the way over here. So I went with Mickey Thompson's. I bought them before. It's a good tire, and they're always on sale. These suckers were on sale for $100 a pair, and I went with the original size. I'm a big fan of kind of the original look, the 235, 75, 15s, or perhaps a size bigger. I don't mind a size bigger, but I'm not a big fan of the big mudders or the 31s, the 32-inch tires on these short wheelbase trucks, unless you're going for a certain look. I kind of tend to like the stock look. Plus the cost. The cost of the 235s was $100 a pair per tire, and just bumping it up one size added like $40 a tire, and going up to 29s or even 31s, 30s, 31s, it was pushing $200, $180 a tire. So bought the original 235s. Unfortunately, FedEx lost two of them. I've got two that showed up, and the other two are who knows where, so I've got to find some time to call FedEx and have them track them down for me. And also a carpet kit came in this week. I ordered the original brown color that will match the rest of the interior. I worked a little bit on the windshield wipers. I have a small problem with that, but we will get to that in the next episode. I just started the process of taking them out, and I will show you some video on that once I get them all the way out. And yeah, it was a quick week. I got a few things done, but we'll have more to show you next week. Talk to you later.